it's Nick from Melbourne, Australia. I'm coming at you with my 80's hard rock CDs. You may have seen me previously introducing the band Faster Pussycat. Today I'm going to introduce a band which we all know, we've all heard of, and they've been around a very long time, and as you can see, it's Bonjovi. Now, I first got into Bonjovi, would have been in 1987. I still remember a high school friend of mine gave me the cassette tape. Back then it was cassettes before we had CDs. And I still remember listening to the album Slippery When Wet, and it completely changed my life. I became a die-hard Bon Jovi fan, and that was the actual band that got me into this hard rock kind of music. So I hold Bon Jovi very dear to my heart, and as you can see here are all my other CDs of various bands, and I've got a few over here as well on the shelf there. So yes, we're looking at Bon Jovi. Now Bon Jovi, they started in New Jersey in America. It's a state in America, New Jersey. Now they released their first album in 1983, and this is it here. It's a self-titled album. Now their first single they released was called Runaway, and it got played on the local radio station, and then gradual momentum happened, and they were starting to get noticed. Then the following year, 1984, they released their second album, which is called 7,800 Degrees Fahrenheit. And of course, they were really starting to get popular in the music scene. Here's a picture of, there's a picture of them there. That's a guitarist and John Bon Jovi, the lead singer. But I've actually read that in regards to this second album, that even to this day, the guys from Bon Jovi don't really play a lot of the songs live because they didn't really regard it as a strong album. So there's a bit of facts for you. Now, the real pinnacle of Bon Jovi's career was in 1986, and they released this album, Slippery When Wet, which was huge. It was an absolute massive album, and it sold over 20 million albums just in the United States itself. 20 million just for this album in the United States, and that's not including the rest of the world. Now, this album produced quite a few massive hit singles, like You Give Love a Bad Name, Living on a Prayer, Wanted Dead or Alive, and there was no stopping them. They were just on top of their game once they released this album, and they toured around the world and toured with other successful bands. And then after they did that world tour, they came back with another album in 1988 called New Jersey, named after their hometown where they came from. And this was equally as successful, pretty much. It produced hit singles like Bad Medicine, Born to Be My Baby, Lay Your Hands on Me, I'll Be There for You. And I could probably safely say that by this stage, 1988, 1989, they were one of the biggest bands in the world. Now they were touring around the world, obviously, with these albums, and of course, touring non-stop, you get a lot of fatigue and tiredness, as you would. Now, they took a few years off, and they came back with an album called Keep the Faith. Now, this was released in 1991, so we just obviously entered a new decade. Now, by the early 90s, a lot of these hard rock bands were beginning to lose interest. A lot of fans were starting to lose interest in them because music was changing. Of course, we had the grunge music era coming in with a bands such as Pearl Jam, Nirvana, who were just huge then, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, and they were very popular. So a lot of these hard rock bands were starting to struggle, and because of the different music climate. But Bon Jovi still, they were still riding high. They actually came through the 1990s relatively unscathed. They kept on producing albums. Now, as I said, Keep the Faith was released in 91, and it showed a more mature Bon Jovi. Their songwriting and playing was more mature than previous albums. And even this album produced hit singles: Keep the Faith, Bed of Roses. What's the other one? In These Arms. Now, as I said, Bon Jovi kept on getting stronger and stronger pretty much, even throughout this period. Now, if we fast forward to the year 2000, the start of the new millennium, and music had definitely changed. Bon Jovi released an album called Crush, and this album actually introduced Bon Jovi to a whole new generation of fans and a whole new generation. Now, they had a massive hit single called It's My Life. Now, you would have heard this on the radio, no doubt. And this made Bon Jovi big again. So they could basically do no wrong, this band. I'll just briefly... Here's the band members here. Now, on the far left, you got Richie Sambora. He was a guitarist. Now, Richie Sambora actually left the band about a year or two ago. Now, he'd been in the band since day one when they first started in 1983, and he left the band for personal reasons. So that was a bit of a shame for Bon Jovi fans. So that's Richie Sambora, guitarist, on the far left. Next to him is Tico Torres. He's the drummer. Next to him is Dave O'Brien. He's the keyboardist. And next to him is Alec John Such, who is a bass player. Now, Alec John Such actually got thrown out of the band in 1994, and they got someone else in, obviously, to replace him. And there's John Bon Jovi, who is obviously the lead singer. So there you go. Now, Bon Jovi have also helped other bands as well. There's a band called Skid Row. That's them there. They actually came from New Jersey as well. And the guitarist from Skid Row, Dave Sabo, was childhood friends with John Bon Jovi. They used to live down the street from each other. And they actually made a pact, an agreement, that whichever band became successful first, they would help out the other band. So, of course, Bon Jovi became successful and they helped out Skid Row. They took them out on tour with them, and they also helped them get a record deal. So Skid Row have got they've got a lot of thanks for Bon Jovi for helping them out. Now, there's also another band that specifically John Bon Jovi helped out. It's a band called Cinderella. Now, they came from Pennsylvania, I think. I'm pretty sure. They were another 80s hard rock band. And John Bon Jovi actually saw these guys performing in a small club, and he took an interest in them. And he introduced them to his record label at the time, back in 85, 86, and Cinderella got signed, and Cinderella had massive success as well. So John Bon Jovi has helped other musicians as well. And also, in his personal life, he's opened up restaurants that help out the homeless and people who are disadvantaged by giving them free meals. He's also involved in building housing, temporary housing for people who are doing it tough, homeless people who don't have a lot of money. So he's got a good heart as well. As well as being a major rock star, he's got a very good heart. So Bon Jovi have survived the test of time. They've survived well, they've been together close to 40 years now, 40 years, and they can still play stadiums and arenas around the world. And they are a testament to a band that has survived through a lot of different musical changes and a lot of different musical climates. So as I said earlier on when I first started, Bon Jovi they hold a special place in my heart because this was the first genre category of music that I got into, and I'm sure everyone, well, my generation, they've heard of Bon Jovi and they've heard the songs on the radio, and we all know, the main lines to the choruses of those songs. So that's my introduction to Bon Jovi, and in case you're wondering why I've got a lot of CDs, I've got CDs because I'd rather have a CD that I could actually hold in my hand. And of course, you've got the booklet, which has got pictures and words to the music. So I actually prefer the old school CDs compared to downloading. That's just me. I'm a bit like that. So that's in case you're wondering why I've got all these CDs. And I'm still collecting CDs, so hopefully I'll have more and more as time goes on. Yeah, so that was Bon Jovi, and next time I might actually introduce you to a band called Poison. You may have heard them back in the day. They were very successful. And another band called Def Leppard, who were actually English. They came from England, but they were huge back in the day. So that's me for today, and thank you for watching, and please subscribe, and for everyone, stay safe, stay inside if you can, don't go outside if you don't need to, stay safe, and probably this is quite fitting. I was talking about Bon Jovi. Keep the faith everyone, and also equally important, rock on. Thanks guys, bye bye.